I was a young woman on the cusp of 21, happily engaged to the love of my life, Seb, 23M, and mother-to-be. I will always remember the day Seb sat me down and proposed his uncle's house as a venue for the baby shower. I'd never so much as set foot on the property, and was understandably nervous. Can the house accommodate all our guests? I wondered, gazing into his bright emerald eyes. They playfully sparkled as he pulled me close. Trust me, his house is huge, perfect for us. I was loath to admit it, but something about this house unsettled me. Perhaps it was the secluded location, the dusty rooms, or his uncle's passing there of suicide. It had apparently been a brutal scene. He had raised Seb, been his father almost, up until then. The Seb I knew and loved was still deeply traumatized. He lost his parents very young, then Jensen, and had lived since then in the foster system. There were good and bad times, he said, but more of the latter. I would have preferred a brighter, spacious venue, such as the one I recently spotted and saved on Pinterest. Still, Seb had his heart set on this house, as it clearly meant so much to him. So I agreed. It was, after all, our day. The drive stretched on, 4 hours through the deep, sullen woods. I winced at every bump. At 30 weeks, I really did not need this sort of stimuli. The house was an ugly, misshapen thing, cobbled together with little more than planks and sheer desperation. I shot a horrified glance at Seb, but he merely took my hand and led me indoors. The parlor was decorated tastefully, if a little old, and he'd already set everything up as per my request. Not so bad, if compared to the outdoors. I smiled, our lips brushing as he wrapped his arms around me. Better? Thank you, thank you. I kissed him eagerly. A perfect shower for our perfect baby. I teared up a little, thinking of the small human inside me, who all too soon would be a young woman with thoughts and opinions and beliefs of her own. Yet I would have her with me for 18 years, 18 beautiful years. What more did I want, need? The guests filtered in, presenting gifts and congratulations, which I accepted gratefully. At some point, my Sil, Cecilia, pulled me aside. Now, Seb and Cecilia were never close. Growing up, she'd been the luckiest of the two. She was adopted by a wealthy upper-class family right off the bat and lived a privileged life while Seb was left with only his uncle for company. She loved to dress up even for casual events such as hiking, cave exploration, etc., and then complained to no end that she wasn't comfortable. Even at my baby shower, she wore a ruffled, layered dress with taffeta that gave the illusion of a gentle, shimmering mist and, "Hey, I'm the baby aunt," embroidered in iridescent letters over a V-necked corset, her elegant white blonde waves braided back and pinned up in some elaborate twist at the nape of her neck. I looked drab by comparison, in my lilac maternity dress and little to no makeup. Did you know Seb used to keep a diary when he lived here? No, I had no idea, but it doesn't matter. Aren't you curious? 'Cause I know I am. I'm sure he'd love to show you the diary. He'd probably trust you more than me anyway. He gets quiet whenever I ask him about the damn thing. No, I don't want to pry. If he wanted me to read it, he would have handed it over by now, trust me. And, given what he went through while living here, it's probably deeply personal stuff. Some things just shouldn't be said. She shrugged. Okay, and handed me a thoughtfully wrapped present. I smiled and thanked her, then headed over to the refreshments table, ensuring everything was going well. All in all, the shower went wonderfully. Later, as Seb slept, I moved about the house cleaning up last night's mess. I was starting to feel some pain and prayed I wouldn't go into labor here, and certainly not now. The study had been extensively used as a playroom for the younger children and was consequently trashed. Sighing, I got to work picking gummy worms up off the floor and what I presumed to be furniture. The fabric of my shirt caught on the edge of a drawer. It slammed down. Silence. "Babe," Seth called, alarmed. "Are you all right?" I exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to my swollen belly, a gesture of reassurance. "I'm fine. Love you. Call if you need help." I smiled to myself, bending to pick up the drawer, when a splash of orange caught my eye. An old school notebook was somehow dislodged from beneath a pile of documents, badly wrapped in colorful Christmas wrapping paper. I noted a crisp sheet of paper beneath it, a copy of our marriage certificate with both our names, Ever Serenz, née Reyes, and Sebastian Serenz. What was that doing here? And that diary, too. I'm still unsure why I did it. All I really know is, in that moment, I knew I had to. I reached for the bundle, trembling. I peeled back the bright packaging and my breath caught. Journal 1990 to 1992. Sebastian Serenz. I flipped it to the first page, and with my heart in my mouth, dived right in. What was I expecting to read? Certainly not the words written upon that page in Seb's looping hand. February 12th, 1990. There is something living in the woods behind our house. I know it because I have seen it. It has an emaciated body and disproportionate limbs. I first saw it lingering by the edge of the woods, and it gets closer every night. I don't know what to do, but I think I should write it all down. Uncle Jensen says that helps with nightmares, only this isn't a nightmare. It isn't. September 24th, 1990. It's getting closer to the house. It makes noise now, too. Screeches and horrible wails. Uncle Jensen doesn't hear them. I'm scared. I will write again, but I don't know when I shuddered, chills running down my spine. Had I mistaken Seb's suggestion for eagerness? Why would he want to revisit such a place? Wouldn't it be a fresh reminder of what he went through? That's awful, I thought, and my heart went out to Seb. How long had he been tormented for? What was tormenting him? I had so many questions, but no answers. Finally, I worked up the courage to continue, flipping to the middle of the diary, to the entry dated March 6th, 1991. It's so close now. It's coming for me. I'm sure of it. It calls my name in the night. If I do not write again, it has gotten me. The last entry, though, was by far the worst. January 1st, 1992. It came. It was scratching, clawing at the walls. Then it shrieked, an ear-piercing shriek, so loud the walls trembled. I could hear it ripping away our front door. I screamed for Uncle Jensen and ran out into the hall. He made me follow him downstairs and be very, very quiet. He had his big black hunting rifle, and when the thing looked dead at us through the window, he fired. The thing screeched again, claws tearing up the fragile door. Uncle Jensen forced me into a closet and locked it. I banged on the doors until my hands were bloody, and then simply sat in defeated silence. Then Uncle Jensen screamed again and again. I could hear the thing snarling and growling and tearing. When I got out 2 days later, the policeman asked me a lot of questions. I told them about the thing, and now I wish I hadn't. They said my uncle killed himself, but I don't believe them either. He was killed. Murdered. My foster mother said it when she thought I was asleep, on the phone with the people she calls social services. Davy in my class says I can bring my uncle back if I sleep in that house again with my family and don't die. He got in trouble for telling tales, but maybe he's right. One day when I have a family, I will try. I couldn't help it. I burst into tears and threw up all over the musty carpet. I jumped to my feet. "Seb!" I screamed as my heart thumped frantically. I thought it might beat out of my chest. "Seb!" I was halfway up the stairs when an unearthly shriek split the air. I gripped the banister, terrified for my life and my unborn child's. Something was clawing at the walls of this house. Seb ran out of our room, saw the diary in my hands, and paled. He ran down and grabbed me by the shoulders. "Did you read it? Tell me, Ever. Did you read it?" He ripped it out of my white-knuckled grasp and tore it to shreds. I was crying so hard I couldn't even speak. Yes, I gasped, clinging to the stair rail. "We gotta get out of here." He shook me hard. "Bitch, stupid bitch, we're gonna die. Why did you read it? We're gonna die, fuck!" "Stop," I pleaded, grabbing him by the arm. "Seb, please." He'd never insulted me like this at all. I was scared and shocked. He whipped around, eyes wild, looking for something to arm himself, no doubt. "Please, just calm down," I sobbed, falling back against the wall. "Oh my God, we are going to die, aren't we?" I decided it was maybe best to accept the hard truth. Then I thought of her, my child inside of me. I couldn't let her die. I'd forfeit my life, but not hers. Never hers. He was pacing, muttering to himself, when another screech sounded just behind us. I looked over my shoulder and saw it, dripping in blood, teeth bared, flesh rotting, staring with dead, empty eyes through the thin, very breakable window. I screamed at the top of my lungs and scrambled up the stairs. Seb grabbed me roughly by the waist. "No, we need to run, not hide." He yanked me down and we stumbled towards the front door. I rooted around in the console for my car keys. Suddenly the door arched towards us, and the tip of a claw showed through. It was getting in. Just then, something clear, wet, and dismayingly unfamiliar trickled down my legs. I looked down, and very nearly passed out. Yep, you guessed it. My water broke. Talk about bad timing. Seb was livid. He gathered me up in his arms and carried me upstairs. "Forget about running," he said through gritted teeth as he laid me on the cold, slimy, tiled floor. He locked the door and knelt, taking my hand, struggling to compose himself. I tried to breathe through my hysterical sobs. "Shut up," he said finally, eyes wild. "We can't let it hear us." I clutched onto him, shaking uncontrollably. "What do I do, Seb? What do I—" He tightened his grip on me. "I don't know. Fuck!" As the contraction tore through me, I recalled through my haze of pain the nurse telling me I'd have to push. Bear down. I bit my lip and did exactly that. Seb was as still as stone. To my horror, I could hear the front door rattling on its hinges. It would give sooner or later, of that I was sure. I bit down on my balled fist, bloodied knuckles throbbing. A ragged scream tore itself from my throat. Seth gripped me even tighter. "Stay with me, Ever," he said hoarsely. Oh shit. Then, she was there. I cradled her in my shaking arms and Seb pulled me to my feet. "Out. We need to get out," I croaked, just as the front door crashed to the ground. He prized the window open, hoisted me onto the sill and took our daughter, wrapping her in a blanket, and handed her back to me. "I'm sorry, Ever. I truly thought it would be gone forever. I just wanted my uncle back." His voice shook over those last words as he helped me out the window. "How could you, Seb? You put me and our daughter in danger. Deadly danger for some stupid lie a kid in your school fed you. You have no idea how much my uncle means to me. I need him back. I thought you were invested in our relationship, but clearly not, if you were prepared to lose us for somebody else. I can't believe you, Sebastian." I slapped him, then looked down at my hand, open-mouthed. We never got physical with each other. Tears welled up in my eyes. How did we get here? He took my hands in his. "It's okay," he said. "I love you, Ever." I wept harder. He cupped our girl's face with one hand and smiled. "Give her a good life," he said softly. When I looked up from her perfect, serene face, I saw grief and unspeakable fear in his eyes. It's about time I faced my own demons. He let go of my hand and I jumped. Thankfully, the house wasn't very high and I was able to protect myself and my baby. I struggled to my feet, choking back a sob, and limped to the car. I managed to get in, to stuff the key in the ignition. I turned and saw it, and Seb's slumped body, the eyes staring and staring, boring into me, and the thing ravaging him. I drove away at full speed, barely able to see the road through my tears, clinging to her like my lifeline in a storm. A pair of hikers discovered me passed out in my car the next morning and took me under their wing. My clothes were ripped and soaked with blood, face bruised and swollen. I screamed incoherently at them, trying to run away, screaming that it was out to get us. I slammed the car door in their faces, but thankfully they calmed me down and got me out of there. My daughter was sent to the hospital for evaluation, as was I. Once we'd been treated, an investigation was opened to find Seb's killer, though I knew they never would. They determined he had died of countless lacerations to the head, neck, and upper body for the most part. The coroner noted the presence of savage bite marks, but could not decide what had attacked him. I filed multiple reports stating we were attacked by an unidentified creature in the woods, and finally convinced them to shut down the investigation after one cop working on the crime scene found his car wrecked, torn apart. I later did my own research on his Uncle Jensen. He'd been married once before to a certain Rachel Allen. Their marriage was reportedly an unhappy one, arranged when they were little more than children. Rachel was suspected of having poisoned their only child, Carl, and of willful neglect, but the charges were dropped despite her husband's protests. He was very vocal about her release and filed for a divorce. They got into a huge argument and she disappeared. Rachel Allen was found dead weeks later, and her case remains unsolved, despite a quantity of evidence pointing towards Jensen being her murderer. After she was discovered, visitors began noticing strange occurrences around the house and Jensen's erratic behavior. Welfare checks were called off when he assured them he was doing just fine. He was arrested briefly after cops found him burning Rachel's belongings as they believed this might be relevant to the case, but could find no correlation whatsoever, and they let him go. About a year later, Seb's parents were involved in a fatal hit-and-run and tragically died, leaving Seb orphaned with nobody to turn to but Jensen, who proved himself to be all too happy to adopt the child and barely mourned his sister Violetta. He, however, refused to take in Seb's orphaned sister Cecilia, who was fortunately adopted into a wonderful household. According to police reports of the scene, Violetta, Seb's mother, was driving recklessly, though her friends were outraged. Violetta Irie Serens, known as V to friends and Letty to family, was described as a sweet, responsible young woman very aware of safety standards and a loving young mother. If Carl had lived, he would have been Seb's age. I can't help but feel there is a connection here, that Seb served as some form of replacement. Our beautiful baby, Alazna Irie, is 5 now. Her name means miracle, which just seems fitting given everything that happened, and she has the same middle name as her grandmother. Seb always wanted that. She has Seb's beautiful eyes and my blonde curls. Her skin is tanned, and secretly I can't help but wish it would be the lovely, smooth ebony of Seb's skin. I love her more than anything. Yet since the day we left the hospital, I have known we are being followed. And in the last months, the faintest scratches can be heard from around the house. Occasionally, a voice can be heard murmuring, I didn't, but never for long. It is always silenced. I tell myself it is nothing, that my fear of losing her like I lost Seb is making me paranoid. But deep down, I know it is coming for us. We will never be safe. It will come for us one day. I can feel it, can feel. The nightmares began on her 6th birthday. Alazny woke me in the dead of night, pale and wide-eyed. I hugged her. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Mommy, I don't like the bad lady. She whimpered, burrowing into my shoulder. Make her go away. My heart skipped a beat. Bad lady? What bad lady? What did she look like? She must have heard the frantic tone of my voice because she trembled slightly. She's all in white and she's screaming, Alazny whispered. I clutched her to me and slid my legs out of bed. Heart in my mouth, I slowly made my way down the hall into Alazny's room, peering through the crack of the door. Nobody was there. I heaved a sigh of relief. You're okay, love. Nobody's in there. I laid her back down to sleep and went back to my room. When the nightly scratching resumed, I wandered around our house and tried to think of anything but Seb and his brutal death. At 3 a.m., I caved. Taking the advice of a kind Redditor, I booked a psychologist appointment, then flicked through texts on my phone. A message from an unknown number awaited me. Hello, Ever. I am Detective Alva Johannesson of City Police Department. Investigations of your husband's murder have resumed, and I would like to speak with you if possible regarding his tragic death. I swallowed, hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed out, Well, could you help me out? I'm sure we could come to an agreement. I sucked in a shaky breath. I'd like police reports concerning Rachel Allen's disappearance and murder as well as Violetta Irie Saren's death. I'll see what I can do. Call me back in a few days. Mommy? My head snapped up. Alasni stood silhouetted in the dark doorway, a ray of moonlight hitting her face, illuminating it in an eerie glow. She swayed slightly on her feet. "Mommy, I'm cold," she whispered. Fear gripped me like a vice. I ran to her side and enveloped her in my arms. As I opened my mouth to speak, she cut me off. "What's that?" "What's what, Alasni?" She tilted her head to one side. "The scratching?" "No." I whirled around. This was the first time she heard it, ever. Did that mean it was affirming its hold on us once more? Swallowing down my fear as best I could, I tried to reassure her. "Oh, that's just the neighbor's puppy. Don't worry about it." "Oh," she said thoughtfully. "Okay." Later on, as I scrolled through my previous posts on Reddit, I came across an intriguing comment. It said the creature seemed to need a witness to kill somebody. I sucked in a breath. If they're right. But how could I do that? I may be able to survive utterly alone, but my daughter could not. And even if she could, how cruel would I be to condemn her to a life of eternal secrecy? Asterisk. But if the creature needs a witness, then if it kills me, Alasni, or Allie as I call her, will be spared, at least for a little longer. I would gladly give all that I own, up to my own life, for her. I just hope in my final moments I will possess all of Seb's selfless love and seamless grace. I shuddered. Please let it be quick when it happens. The same evening, Alasni walked home with her new friend Mike from a few doors down. As soon as she burst through the front door, she jumped into my arms, giggling. "Allie," I laughed, spinning her around. "How was school?" "Teacher told me I make up too many stories," she exclaimed, grinning impishly. I chuckled and set her down on the couch. "Really? Well, I don't think so. What did you say to her?" "Well, I heard the neighbor's doggie scratching at the school walls, too. But she didn't hear it. She said I was telling silly stories." Words cannot describe the horror of that moment. I froze, my pulse racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, struggling to stay calm. It had followed her, my daughter, my ally. I swore to Seb I'd give her a good life. I couldn't fail her now. I smiled through the tears blurring my vision. "Why don't you go on up to your room, sweetie? I'll have dinner ready in a few." I kissed the top of her head and tried to look more serene than I felt. As I chopped onions and minced garlic, all I could think of was Seb and his untimely end. My head spun and I genuinely thought I might be sick all over. I couldn't let that happen to my ally. I would die 1,000,000 deaths before I let it kill her. But I knew deep down that when the day came, it was out of my hands. Only it had the power to decide who lived and who died. Desperate, I dialed Detective Alva. "Hello? Hi, it's, Ever Serene's. I'm calling about..." "I know. I have the documents, hun. Just let me know where I can contact you. And about that interview?" "Anytime," I said. "Name a place and a time, I'll be there." "All right." She sounded surprised. "I'll see when I'm available." I gave her my number and she sent me the documents. Transcript of interview with Rachel Allen, D.H. Detective Harrison here. We are now recording. R.A. Okay, thanks. D.H. So, Rachel, could you talk us through the events of Saturday, August 4th, 1985? R.A. I woke up alone, as usual. Jensen was out hunting, no doubt. It was maybe around 10 p.m. I went downstairs for a glass of water and Carl was asleep in his room when I went to check in on him. He was very still. I went back to bed and woke around 12. Jensen came in. I sat up and all of a sudden he was screaming. He came in and pinned me to the bed, on the phone with 911. I was crying and trying to push him off of me. He didn't tell me what was happening. D.H. So he held you down? Did he do anything else besides that? Touching, shoving, verbal abuse? Was there anything sexual? R.A. No. He always seemed disgusted by me. We rarely touched or kissed. I only ever got pregnant once with Carl due to his parents pressuring us. D.H. Did you love Carl? R.A. Wow, this is a tough one. No, there was no kinship between us, due to my MIL essentially forcing me to get pregnant. I was fine with him being around, I guess. That's all I can really say. D.H. Thank you for your honesty, Rachel. Can you tell me more about your relationship with Jensen? R.A. Well, he was sort of absent. He went hunting all day, even after we were married, and came home late at night, often not at all. We never tried to properly care for one another. I considered him more of a roommate. D.H. And did that change after Carl was born? R.A. Yes and no. Our relationship got worse by the day, but he fucking adored Carl. Took him out hunting pretty much as soon as he could walk. Made me sell my own clothes to buy him a new bed. D.H. And did you ever do things you shouldn't have to spite your husband? Silence, R.A. Yes, but I didn't kill our child. The transcript ended suddenly. I shuddered, wrapping my arms around myself. It was a messed up tale all around. My heart ached for the young couple that was so suddenly and miserably thrown together, and Rachel especially, pregnant with a child she didn't want. It's inhuman. She never deserved so much pain. The media at the time had been too quick to paint Rachel Allen as a cruel, careless woman. Despite all that she suffered, I find it hard to believe she would kill Carl. They also never mentioned how none of it would even have happened if she wasn't made to get pregnant and have a child she couldn't love. I called my daughter down. Allie was bouncing up and down excitedly. "Mommy, can I go play with the puppy? He's outside again. Pleasey." "No, Alasny, you're not allowed to, okay?" "Okay," she pouted. I smiled and grabbed a sweet for her, which she snatched away eagerly and darted off giggling. I turned back to my screen and the transcripts Alva sent me. Coroner's report of Jensen Saren's death, TW violence, vertical bar. Depictions of gore post-examination. The coroner, Honore Smith, determined that Saren suffered 5 lacerations of around 10 centimeters in length to the chest and back. A laceration of about 35 centimeters to his left arm and his right arm was severed at the elbow. The victim's neck was sliced, resulting in a severed carotid artery, although the victim eventually perished of blunt force trauma to the head and stomach. The coroner describes his injuries as being consistent with a hate crime, with the intent to make the victim suffer as much as possible. I felt sick to my stomach. Was this to be my fate? Or Alasna's? No, I couldn't let that happen. That night, the scratching escalated into downright clawing just below Allie's window. I made her sleep in my room and camped out in the hallway all night, trembling every time I heard the faintest noise. I wondered how I could protect Alasna. The creature needed a witness, so all I could do was have her hide and shift the attention to myself. Then she would become the witness, and I, the victim. The next morning, as Alasna walked to school, which was located just down the road, with her friend, Mike, I wondered if the creature was Rachel herself. It would explain the creature's hatred for Jensen and Seb. But why me? Why Allie? I sighed, leaning back against the counter. And what about Violet? How did she affect this? But if she truly was so loving, why would she go after Seb? My head spun with all the info. Then something clicked. I recalled an old legend my aunt used to tell me. The Wendigo. Once human, it had cannibalized other humans and been turned into a creature as terrifying as its soul. I thought of Rachel. She was last seen around Wilson Wood, but why? Had Jensen done something to her? Tried to kill her? What if Jensen was trying to poison Rachel and Carl had drank the poison instead? Then she would have realized how dangerous he truly was. After Violetta's car wreck, the bodies of herself and her husband were never found. Maybe Jensen hid them? It was already clear to me by now that he somehow managed to have them killed and to take Seb as a replacement son. And they crashed near Wilson Wood. What if Rachel was lost in the deep woods and happened upon their bodies, and in her desperation, near starving, ate them? Was turned into a Wendigo, thus leaving behind her human body. I started to sob. I needed to get Alasny safe somehow, somewhere. The creature, Rachel, was pitiless. What's more, she would start to be afraid. I couldn't fool her for long with my, "Oh, it's just the neighbor's silly puppy" story. Then the phone rang. I snatched it up, pressing my ear to the receiver. "Ever Serene's here, hello?" "Miss Saren's, this is Officer Ortiz. Your neighbor, Mike Kyson, went missing while walking to school with your daughter, Alasni Serens. Come take her home, she's very shaken up." I was horrified. Was Alasni the witness in his attack? No doubt Rachel got him too. I jumped in the car to get her. The boy had vanished suddenly and with no trace, though there were signs of a struggle. Alasni seemed disturbed and barely did anything anymore. She sat around all day, crying silently. She grew frighteningly sickly. "Honey," I whispered one night, drawing her to me. I stroked her hair. "Did something happen with Mike?" She shook her head, sobbing harder. "Don't be scared. You can tell me," I coaxed, and she gripped me fearfully. "I just wanted to play with the puppy," she wailed.